Stan Lee said that every comic book is someone's first. And in this case, the Joker's 5-Way Revenge was mine. Now, I love superhero movies. Still, I'd never actually taken the plunge to pick up a comic book and read it. So when I got the chance to interview Neal Adams, I took it as a sign that I should start reading. I realized that the Joker's 5-Way Revenge was not only accessible, but also really familiar. Like this was a Joker that I'd seen before. It wasn't until I actually talked to Neal that I was able to understand the how and the why.
We have to remember this about Batman before we get to Joker. We have to remember that Batman is not a superhero. I mean, we have a whole genre of superheroes. We have at one end, created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, Superman, the greatest superhero of all. He comes from another planet. At the other end, we have Batman, who was not bitten by a radioactive spider or hit by a lightning bolt or anything else. He was a man who existed as a result of his parents being assassinated on the street by the worst kind of punk in the world. He just shot them down, and he decided to spend his life fighting crime. So when Joker comes along, yes, he's whack-a-ding-hoy, but at the same time, he's a real guy who's gone off the deep end. And so a great enemy for Batman, because Batman, to a certain extent, being a little overly dedicated to his job, has to see himself in Joker. And Joker, had he gone another direction, has to see himself in Batman. So there's this unique relationship between Batman and Joker that doesn't exist between many comic book characters.
Okay, so this dichotomy of adversarial equals, the yin and the yang, is a crucial part to Batman and Joker's relationship.
They're close psychologically in many ways, and yet totally different and apart. You don't find that in superheroes. You really don't. You find it in Batman.
But that key relationship and those darker elements of Batman's personality were pretty much lost in the 1960s TV show, which took on a more humorous tone and had a really catchy theme song.
The television show, even though some people might not like it, it was a wonderful television show. It was a satire. It was not meant to be Batman, but it was a satire, and it was successful. And anybody who tries to stop a success, you have to admit, is kind of stupid. The problem is, when the show ended, what do? I knew that my editor, Julius Schwartz, was not how shall you put it? He was not adverse to the success of the television show, but he then became worried that with the show gone, what was he going to do with Batman, because the sales were dropping. So I went into his office and I said, Julie, I'd like to do Batman. Well, he kicked me out of his office. And I went in a month later, I said, Julie, I'd like to do Batman. He kicked me out of his office again. So I went down the hall to Murray Boltinoff. Murray Boltinoff is the editor of comic books like Brave and Bold, where Batman was teamed up with Aquaman, and Batman was teamed up with Green Arrow and Teen Titans and Sergeant Rock and all these other characters. And I volunteered to do Brave and Bold, because then at least I got a chance to do Batman.
It's about at this point in the story that Neal is often credited with changing Batman. But he told me that he doesn't feel that way at all.
People ascribe a certain responsibility to me and a certain amount of credit to me for somehow changing Batman. The truth of the matter is, I didn't change Batman at all. Batman was established by Bob Kane. It was carried on by guys like Dick Sprang and Jerry Robinson. And so they were really on a good roll there until there was the television show.
Which brings us back to The Brave and the Bold. And Neal is taking Batman back to his roots as the Grim Avenger of the Night.
Well, about 3 months later, Julie Schwartz is waiting for me in the hallway, looking a little angry and saying, how come I have all these letters here from kids saying the only Batman is in Brave and Bold? I guess that's the only Batman at DC. He said, how come you know what Batman should be and we don't? I said, Julie, every kid in America knows what Batman should be, except DC Comics. You really need to change it back to what it was. He agreed, and we went ahead and we started to do Batman stories, not with Bob Haney, who I had done it with over in Brave and Bold, but with Denny O'Neil, who was a police reporter originally and had a much more realistic bent on things. So between the two of us, we managed to do a very realistic Batman.
Now that Batman wasn't wearing his underwear in the daytime and drinking milk,
we moved to, well, of course, Joker's 5-Way Revenge, which was a reintroduction of the Joker after he had been missing for 4 or 5 years. And so the question was, what do we do with the Joker now? Do we make him the same way he was? Kind of silly. Yeah, we have to do that. Can we make him more deadly? Actually, he was pretty deadly back in the old days. Why don't we just do the Joker? Maybe a little bit more deadly, but really, the old Joker was pretty darn good. And so we introduced the Joker in that one comic book, and everybody fell in love with the Joker.
Kind of the same way audiences fell in love with the Joker after The Dark Knight. The Joker's 5-Way Revenge did for comics what The Dark Knight did for movies. Before The Dark Knight, there was an entire generation of moviegoers that hadn't seen the Joker, not since Jack Nicholson's portrayal in 1989. That's 19 years.
You can call me Joker.
Not dissimilar to the 4 to 5 years that the Joker was missing from the comics. Both the comic book and the movie, respectively, had to reintroduce audiences to the character. And while Nicholson's Joker was successful, Heath Ledger completely reimagined what was thought possible for a villain. He was menacing, he was homicidal, he shows no mercy. The Joker's 5-Way Revenge also brings the character back to his homicidal roots of the 1940s. The first few pages of the comic and the opening scene of the movie are eerily similar. They both nail that new deadly characterization of the Joker on the head. In the comic book, the Joker escapes from the hospital for the criminally insane and starts taking out members of his old crew left, right, and center. By page 11, he's killed 4 people. He's ruthless and on a rampage. In The Dark Knight, the Joker has hired a crew to help him rob the bank, and then he kills them all. In the first 5 minutes of the movie, he's killed 5 people, equally ruthless. Both the comic and the movie are examples of the complex relationship between Joker and Batman. In Joker's 5-Way Revenge, the Joker has the opportunity to kill Batman, but he doesn't. He says, "I'd always envisioned my winning as a result of cunning, at the end of a bitter struggle between the Batman and myself. Without the game that the Batman and I have played for so many years, winning is nothing." And in The Dark Knight, as the Joker is dangling before Batman, he says,
"I think you and I are destined to do this forever."
And they are. They are such a fundamental rivalry in the superhero genre.
We have to remember that these are really great, iconic characters in the American idiom. They are wonderful.
The Dark Knight's release in 2008 and Iron Man's release that same year were phase 2 of the superhero genre explosion for film and TV. And I get it, a lot of people have superhero fatigue, but I think it's a really exciting time in the genre. Especially for new fans like me, it makes it more accessible to go back to the source material and enjoy stories like Joker's 5-Way Revenge.
The giant community that is comic books is a superhero genre that is now opening up and becoming many more things. You have lots of different ideas, lots of different expressions. I mean, look at all the movies, look at all the television shows, look at all the computer games, look at all the t-shirts, look at all the licensing, look at everything across the world. And the world is loving American comic books. And we do it better than anybody.